All right, well, first I want to thank Mark Singer and Kim and the North Scottsdale Church and the pastor for inviting me here today to share with you what is going on in the Middle East. As you know, in a few days there will be the annual, by the chief executive, whoever he may be, State of the Union address about the condition of the United States at this time and what our hopes are for the future. I recall many years ago, President Nixon tried to introduce a State of the World speech, keeping domestic and world separate because the world is a complex place. With that as an introduction, I humbly present to you the state of the Middle East as we start 2015. Now, the title of my newest forthcoming book, it's in the hands of the publisher, and I hope it'll be out by the spring. The title is Understanding the Volatile and Dangerous Middle East. And I may say humbly, having studied the region, traveled to the region, I believe that this time we are living in, now, the volatile and dangerous Middle East is more volatile and more dangerous than at any other time in its history. And that's why I'm going to give you this synopsis. I gave you a map so you won't get lost. And I'll have a pop quiz on all of this at the end of the session. So we begin, and this is my definition of the Middle East. It's many times they show a small map and they start with Egypt and they maybe get down to Saudi Arabia. It is much bigger than that. It extends from Morocco and Mauritania on the west to Iran and Oman on the east. From Cyprus and Turkey in the north to Yemen, Sudan, Djibouti, Somalia, and the Comoros in the south. But in any event, here we go. If you have questions, there'll be a question and answer session after my presentation. We will have a few announcements as well, and I will answer every question that you have. Starting in what the Arabs term the Arab Maghreb, which is the Arab West, we start with Morocco. And when I speak about Morocco briefly, and I'm going to do thumbnails on all of this, we need to understand that an operative word that should be used in talking about Morocco, but is never heard by the media or repeated on the media, is the word occupation. Yes, I know you've heard of quote-unquote Israeli occupation. I'll get to that. But Morocco has been occupying Western Sahara for 40 years. How many newspaper articles have been written about that? How many UN resolutions have been passed? How many condemnations by world leaders, including American and European leaders, have there been? Answer, zero, nada, squat. Morocco took this huge landmass and absorbed it into its kingdom. Nobody says anything. But what you have to do is go and ask the Sahrawi, the inhabitants of that region, who live, most of them, across the border in Algeria, in refugee camps, waiting for the day that they can go home to their declared country, the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, which was proclaimed in 1976 and recognized by many nations, including the African Union. That's why Morocco is not in the African Union. It doesn't like what it hears, so it left. So anytime people talk about Israeli occupation, we can bring up a few occupations. Crimea, Western Sahara, the list goes on. Moving further to the east, we have Algeria. Now, this country is embattled by a secular government supported by the military, but there is also large elements of Al-Qaeda. This is Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb, Al-Qaeda in the West, and the Muslim Brotherhood for good measure. Don't let anybody fool you, and I think we all can think of someone in mind, who says, Al-Qaeda is finished. We killed Osama and that's it. That's like saying Hitler died and the Nazis are finished. Sorry, never happened that way. Algeria experienced a ferocious civil war that lasted from 1991 to 2002. Most Algerians don't want to go through that again as they turn around and see the turmoil in the region. That's one of the reasons you did not necessarily see any real manifestation of what the media promptly and wrongly misnamed the Arab Spring, quote unquote. What the Algerians and many others fear is not an Arab Spring, but an Islamist winter. Wow. Moving to Tunisia. Tunisia had its first presidential election since the upheaval in 2011. They had it last November. A leaning secularist government is in charge there. However, great strength in the El Nada party and the Muslim Brotherhood. By the way, you may be picking up on this. The Muslim Brotherhood is everywhere, and they're not done. What we tend to forget, and I need to mention now, and I may mention again, is that the Muslim Brotherhood and the forces of what I term alternatively Islamofascism or Islamist supremacism, they have been beaten in a battle, or in 2 battles, or in 10 battles. This does not mean they have been suppressed, eliminated, wiped out, or decisively broken so that we could claim true victory in the context of a global war. And please, don't ever let anyone convince you different. We are in a global war. Norman Podhoretz named it, wrote an excellent little book that I finished reading recently called World War IV. In case you missed one, the Cold War was World War III. Global, 2 great antagonistic ideologies. That's what's going on now with us. Unfortunately, we have not really been fighting back. So this world war will be a long one. And think about it, well, here's a basic problem. The American people, by and large, are very impatient. I gotta go to the dentist, let's hurry up, let it get over with, that unpleasantness of drilling my teeth, and I'm out of here. Okay? Hurry up and get to the next thing. Well, wars don't work that way. Wars end when one side prevails over the other. Remember in World War I, we were in that war, the United States, not the length of the war, but our participation, we were in there for about a year and a half. In World War II, we were in there about 3.5 years. The Cold War was 42 years. This World War IV will be decades, especially since we've had such a splendid beginning and American riposte. But back to my point about the Muslim Brotherhood or Al-Qaeda or both or any other group, for they change the names to protect the guilty when there's too much notoriety that even the mainstream media can't avoid putting it in there. Like what happened in Paris, they had to use the word Islamist, but then they found qualifying adjectives to obfuscate the whole thing. The fact of the matter is that if you beat them in a battle or two, they will come roaring back with a counterattack. And don't be fooled by the counterattack when you hear the people on the left globally, not just here, but Europe, the Middle East, even in Israel, the leftists are unreal. They scream, "We're losing, time to leave." So some of you are young enough to recall, we had this little incident in November and going into December of 1944, which we called the Battle of the Bulge, the offensive in the Ardennes. Look up the statistics. I had it written out. I have it ready if anybody asks me about that on the radio show. We took a pounding, and I sit there and say to myself, you know, had the media of today been around then, they would have called for Roosevelt to face facts, the war is over, pull out all the American troops from Europe. And you know very well, had we done that, the Nazi banner would be flying still. So you must understand, anytime we gain a success, the enemy will redouble efforts because they have studied our history better than you know your own history, redouble their efforts to counterattack, inflict a bloody nose or worse on you. The current method is decapitation of the head or crucifixion, and make you leave, and then they win. Everybody knows this. Talk to military men who participated in the Indochina War. No, it's misnamed Vietnam. Media again. Let's make it seem smaller, but it was bigger. We won. How come the other side prevailed? Because they undermined us. Then our media and other politicians push that image, and the American electorate, who I fear are not only low information and low knowledge citizens, but becoming increasingly more so. That's why these efforts that I hear being planned about understanding a constitution, and Governor Ducey has announced we're going to have mandatory civics lessons. Civics lessons need to be done in schools every year. Once they get out of high school, they may never see or hear any of this again. And that's why Jay Leno on the street or Waters World on Fox, this is the sad face of it. And you've got to remember, he edited, there must have been even worse answers, and yes, maybe some better answers, but these are people, they may be very skilled at what they do, but they know nothing. They do not understand what this country represents or was built upon. So Al-Qaeda is busy. They exist. We defeated them in Afghanistan. Stay tuned. As Arnold Schwarzenegger once said, and I paraphrase, we'll be back. And they will. Moving to Libya. You remember Libya. This is the prime example of leading from behind. Waging war without any real authorization. And why did we get involved? Because our allies who decided to do this ran out of equipment that they needed Uncle Sam to pick up the tab. And what did we get? Well, let's understand what we lost. We had Muammar Gaddafi, eccentric, despot, dictator of Libya for 41 some odd years, who was a royal pain in the derriere, worldwide sponsor of terrorism, all sorts of things, many of which most people don't know. I came across the fact that he ordered the Queen Elizabeth II sunk in the Mediterranean on a 25th anniversary celebration cruise to Israel. And at the last minute, Sadat found out about it and called the Egyptian submarine back. And you may wonder how come a Libyan dictator is ordering an Egyptian submarine. It's because at that moment in history, they had a federation, Libya, Sudan, and Egypt. So he had equal authority. But these things were out there. Well, he was deadly. And you know, Reagan took a firm stand and bombed him. Didn't get him, but bombed him, and he muted down a bit. But because of what George Bush did in Iraq, Gaddafi got the word. Oh my God, it isn't just pontificating by the American government and people. They take action too. And look how quickly they got to Baghdad. Don't be fooled by the map. Libya is a huge country. But most of its inhabitants live along the coastal strip of the Mediterranean. And Gaddafi saw that. He said, if they could go into Iraq and knock out Saddam Hussein, they can swat me like a fly. I better shift if I want to survive. And what was his shift? He voluntarily said, I'll dismantle the secret nuclear arms weapons program that I've been constructing here, which, yes, I know I've been denying for years and years, but I will dismantle it and let you come in and witness all of that wherever you like to go. So we defanged him, we neutered him, he began playing ball with us, and then what? We got rid of him. And what did we get as a bonus? Well, we got as a bonus multiple militias, Islamic groups of various names, including Al-Qaeda offshoots, Muslim Brotherhood, separate sections of the country under various governments, and yes, a civil war which continues to this day. That's what we got for our trouble. We didn't bring democracy to Libya. And we also sent out one of those unspoken lessons. As a former teacher, high school, college, university, graduate school, I know many times it's not just the lesson of the day, it's what else have you learned? And the message came out that Muammar Gaddafi was an idiot for dismantling his nuclear weapons program.
If he had built nuclear weapons,
then Britain, France, led from behind by the Obama administration, wouldn't have dared intervene. And now this magnifies the problem we face across the Middle East. We move to Egypt. And this, to me, is the one good ray of sunshine, and it is a problem. On New Year's Day, completely obscured and thought of as unimportant by Western mainstream media, the current president of Egypt, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, made a New Year's Eve speech at Al-Azhar University. Al-Azhar is the foremost theological center of not only Egypt, not only of the Arab world, but of the entire Islamic world. And to a group of prestigious imams, theologians, and others, Al-Sisi, who should be regarded now as a hero globally, commented about the need for, quote, religious revolution. He made his remarks, as I say, to these men at a special celebration at the birth of, honoring the birth of the Prophet Muhammad, which was ironically on our New Year's Day. And this is not a day acknowledgedly celebrated in the Muslim world, New Year's Day, as it is based on a Christian calendar. And he addressed these men, and I do want to mention these key points. It is inconceivable, he said, that the thinking that we hold most sacred should cause the entire Ummah, that is the Islamic world community, to be a source of anxiety, danger, killing, and destruction for the rest of the world. Impossible, end of quote. The president further invoked the classical Islamic teaching that the thinking, he doesn't call it ideology, but that's what it is, the thinking that divides the world into two warring halves, the Muslim world, or in what the Arab and Muslim peoples refer to as Dar al-Islam, which must forever be in struggle with the rest of the world, which is called Dar al-Harb, which is, quote, the abode of war. Till, in the Quran's words, quote, all religion belongs to Allah. This is in Quran, Surah 8, Ayat 39. Is it possible, asked Sisi, that 1.6 billion people should want to kill the rest of the world's inhabitants, that is 7 billion, so that they themselves may live? Sisi made another important point, that Western leaders and media habitually lie about. After affirming that Islamic quote-unquote thinking is antagonizing the entire world, end of quote, he said this Ummah, this Islamic community, being torn is being destroyed. It is being lost, and it is being lost by our own hands, end of quote. In other words, Islamic terrorism, chaos, all those groups is not a product of what you hear the Western leaders and media and others saying. It's not a product of grievance, territorial disputes, colonialism, poverty, Israel, offensive actions and by the West, including cartoons, or anything else the West points to. It is a product of, quote, their own hands.
Amen.
Now, we never had an Arab Muslim leader say anything close to this. All right? This will make him, by the way, a marked man. Understand that. Because they will seek to silence him with a bullet or a bomb. One hopes he does better than President Sadat. And again, what many don't understand, they believe, well, Sadat was killed because he made peace with Israel. What's not mentioned is Sadat made the most favorable peace for Egypt, most disadvantageous for Israel, and yet he was still killed. His own people didn't understand he was finessing. He was using a plan of stages. He was using deception. He was using the nice tone of words that Westerners want to hear. But he methodically gained tremendously, and despite that, they killed him. So we wish Sisi well, and we wish this will inspire others, and there has been at least one other person supporting this. In fact, earlier, and it was the Crown Prince of Bahrain who did so. But we need thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions to say we need to revise or rethink our thinking. Okay? So we go to Turkey. Oh, we remember Turkey. I remember teaching at the time about the Korean War. Most people don't know Turkey was one of the 16 countries that joined the United States in going into Korea. And I found out from Korean veterans, oh, the Turks, we loved having them here. Because whenever they got an R&R pass, the Turks didn't go into the canteen. They slipped over the line and came back the next morning with North Korean ears, lips, noses, other parts. And the North Koreans and the Communist Chinese didn't want to serve opposite any position on the line where Turks were. They're formidable people, formidable fighters. However, that said, we go to the present. And now we have one man, Erdogan, current president, former prime minister, who's been in power since 2003. And slowly, stealthily, he has been Islamizing his nation. Okay? And he had to do it that way because from the time of Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, 1923, who established the modern republic, until 2003, there was the great safeguard to make sure that Turkey remained on the path of secularization and westernization. And that safeguard was the Turkish military. And 3 times in Turkey's history of the republic, they intervened, not to seize power and put a general in a coup. No. To restore the secularist power and continue the trend. Well, Erdogan knew his history, and he is the one who decided, I will stealthily purge the military, purge the press, purge other political parties, so that today Turkey is well on the road of Islamization. All right? Instead of being part of the solution in the Middle East, as some hoped, Arab countries around, look at Turkey, what a nice secular, pro-Western oriented country. No, Turkey is not the solution. Turkey has become a new, additional, large problem. Turkey encourages the jihadism throughout the Middle East, North Africa, and beyond. Turkey is too big, too Islamist, and too un-European for the European Union. They don't want to let it in anymore. It was hoping to join the European Union, and the Europeans don't want to do that. And one of the big reasons is, oh, here it comes again, that word, occupation. We don't hear much about this one either, do we? Since 1974, Turkey has occupied the northern third of the island of Cyprus, which is a European Union nation, and the alleged grievance was our 18% Turkish Cypriots are being persecuted. Sounds familiar. I remember that funny little man with the mustache. My Germans are being persecuted. You must allow me to have A, B, C, X, Y, Z. They invaded and took over 33% of the island. And the Attila Line, nice name they picked, deliberately, the Attila Line partitions the island, partitions the capital, Nicosia, and the Turks, who accuse others of doing this, but never will fess up to their own. They didn't admit the Armenian genocide to this day. They ethnically cleansed every Greek Cypriot from the northern part of Cyprus and brought in outsiders from Turkey to settle that area, changing the demography on the ground so it will never go back to the legal Cypriot government. But you don't hear this at the UN. You only hear accusations that the Israeli occupation is ethnically cleansing. Excuse me, it isn't even an occupation. How can you occupy a territory that has only claimants to it, and coincidentally, Israel has the best legal, biblical, and right of self-defense claim to that area? So what we see is the world turned upside down, and the reversal and inside-out use of, I'll call you an occupier, what I'm doing is not to be discussed. Your speech insults me, so I want to suppress it. But I don't have to be accountable for my speech. This is what's going on. And it's about time more people know these facts and begin to say, wait a minute, let's look at the record. Let's look at history. All right, Erdogan and his government have neo-imperial aspirations, and they think in terms of a neo-Ottoman Empire to have tremendous sway in the Middle East. It's been aiding and abetting the Nusra Front. They're Sunni. Turkey is mostly Sunni, against the Assad regime in Syria. It is assisting the Islamic State, or ISIL. Yes, ISIL is a better acronym than ISIS. ISIL means Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant. But of course, most media, they've got journalists, if they look at a map, I'd be surprised, haven't done any research. The Levant is an old historic name going way back to the late 18th century to explain the coastal area between southern Turkey and Egypt, including the hinterland. So the Levant includes southern Turkey, Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, Israel, Jordan, even the Sinai Peninsula. But they don't know that, so let's play with ISIS, and what do we call it? ISIL. Waste sentences on all of this discussion. But Erdogan is assisting the Islamic State, as it styles itself now, because he's got an open border. How did the girlfriend of the killer in the Jewish market in Paris get back to Syria? She went to Turkey and they let her walk across the border. Remember, this is the guy who, when George Bush wanted to get rid of Saddam Hussein quickly, because we truly feared, and he did have them, he'd use the chemical weapons he had. Turkey said, no, you can't invade from Turkey from the north. That's our so-called NATO ally. All right? Erdogan has broken with Israel. Israel and Turkey had a very strong intelligence and military connection under the secular government. But he turned around and decided to make himself the darling of the Arab world, the Palestinian Arabs and others, and Israel is an aggressor, and we should put Israel in the dock, and all the rest of it, and it spews out forever, and the Israeli left doesn't even know what to do or how to say anything about that. Theoretically, it's a NATO ally. In reality, it is a part-time NATO ally, starkly symbolized by the military exercises which took place recently between the Chinese army, think about the Chinese in Turkey, the Chinese army and the Turkish army. When's the last time any other NATO ally had maneuvers with the Chinese army? I can't call the Korean War maneuvers. Okay, so here's the guy, we have a problem with him, all right? And he's trying to straddle the fence, and yes, there are times, he's Sunni, Iran is Shiite. He wants to be a regional hegemon. Iran claims it's a regional hegemon. They at times will differ, but there are times they cooperate. So this man, and I've seen people say it, I believe it, we need to, if you want to be kind, suspend Turkey from NATO membership until its government is reformed or changed, or better still, expel it. Because at this point, they're doing more harm than good. Imagine Turkish generals sitting in at NATO meetings as they try to plan strategy to deal with threats in Europe, threats in the Middle East, and threats in North Africa and the Indian Ocean. Moving to Syria. So we have, you've got to keep score. It's worse than a game of ping pong, the ball going back and forth. Yes, we support Syria. No, we don't support Syria. Oh, Syria was on the terrorist list. In came Obama and said, we can open a new page with Syria. We know how well new pages work. New page in Libya, new page in Syria, new page with Cuba. Oh yeah, all these new pages work well. We thought we can get Assad back, quote, on our side. These people don't get it. They don't want to be on your side. They want their own side. And how are we going to do that? Oh, they had this great idea at that time, 2009, just as Obama came in. We'll sponsor a Syrian-Israeli peace, just like Egypt. And what will that mean for Israel? Well, you got to give them back the whole Golan Heights. You got to let the Syrian army sit on the cliffs and down at the water's edge of the Sea of Galilee. That'll make everything fine, and you'll have peace. And the Israeli leftists took that idea from America and ran with it. Yes, 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 yes. Imagine if the fools would have done it. And then the Syrian civil war starts. So speaking of the Syrian civil war, we are now in year 4. We now have seen 200,000 dead. We now see half the Syrian population of 6 million, meaning 3 million, as refugees floating to Turkey, the parts of Syria that Assad controls. Jordan is being overwhelmed. And oh, don't worry, Obama has an answer. I'll admit more of them into the United States as refugees. As an executive, he has that power. And I'm waiting for some journalist to sit down and write the story. Since 2009, how many, quote, political refugees, how many refugees claiming persecution for their beliefs have been admitted to the United States by executive fiat? And you will be staggered to find out what the number is. And they're here, and then you have to ask yourself, are they going to assimilate? Like those in France, Belgium, Sweden, United Kingdom, Spain. Time does not allow for me to run through the list of those countries. Okay? Assad is winning and will continue to win. I said it on the show, and I know you listen to the show. I've said it on the show. Iran will fight in Syria to the last Syrian. Iran does not want to leave Syria. It's got a dream, a Shiite crescent. You look at the map. Iran, Iraq, because Iraq is majority Shiite. Iran, Iraq. Iraq is a Iranian satellite now. Syria, Lebanon, and then you jump down to Gaza. Iran has influence on all those places. If it loses in Syria, the crescent is broken. Iran doesn't want that. So they will help Assad. And besides, Vladimir Putin, he too wants to keep Assad in power, because Assad has been the most faithful and loyal pro-Russian of all Arab leaders over the past 30, 40 years. And Russia, because of that, has port facilities at Tartus and Latakia. They have air surveillance opportunities. They don't want to lose that, so we'll support. Besides, anything Russia can do to throw a monkey wrench into the American foreign policy, Putin does it. Because he knows who he's dealing with and how we react. You all know how we react. Okay. War will continue, as I said, as long as he has the backing of Iran and Russia. Russia more for diplomatic backing.
And for arms sales.
The Islamist forces on the ground, and it gets me, because we keep hearing this. I just read a news story yesterday. Oh, the United States is going to be training a group of, quote, free Syrians, Assad opponents. Tell me, in the Arab world, do they walk around with little labels? Hi, I'm an anti-Assad guy. Hi, I'm a free Syrian. Hi, I'm a member of ISIL. I'm a member of the Brotherhood. No. So who's vetting these people? Do these people who are vetting even know Arabic? This is another big issue we don't have time to get into. How many people, when we all went to high school and college, learn a foreign language. Yes, French, Spanish, German, Italian, okay. How many times did you hear anybody offering, maybe they did offer Russian because we had a Cold War. That was done. After the Cold War, and Dr. Goldberg out there can testify, the interest in Russian speakers kind of dropped off. But how many Arabic speakers do we have? Farsi speakers who can translate what is commonly called Persian. Turkish speakers. How many? And then what are they doing with it? So we get their propaganda translated for us by them in English, French, German, and whatever, and we're supposed to understand that their words is the real truth, not what they're saying in their original languages to their own people. If you believe that...
We have oceanfront property right here in Arizona that we could sell you.
Okay, so the Civil War will go on there, and there are no Democrats in your and my definition of that term in Syria. Those kind of Syrian Democrats, they're in exile. They've been there for a long time. What you have in Syria, and this is what the misnamed Arab Spring was all about, is not the good guys, the forces of truth, justice, and democracy against the evil tyrants. No, there was no other side. It's the same side, two ends of the same pole. At one end, the more secular of the Islamist forces. At the other end, the more dedicated theologically, if you want to use the term, and I hesitate at times to use it, more extreme. They're the ones that are battling for control. And yet we do this. We're training them. We're giving them weapons. Whose weapons? Financed by who? You all know the answer to that. We just sent $1.5 billion worth of weapons to the Iraqi government. What is this, for a replay? The first take wasn't good enough? Give them the weapons, they throw them down, run away, and ISIL gets them? So now we're giving them more weapons, so what? After 6 months of training, they may throw them away and ISIL will get them? It's a wonderful indirect military support system that we're running here. All right. There is an additional problem with Syria that we have to bring out, aside from the constant civil war. And by the way, pick up the key points that come out. Obama got, remember, we're drawing a red line. If they cross the red line, we're going to go in and do it. Except I've moved the red line back a little bit. Except I've moved it back a little bit. Except I don't want to cross it. So Russia, thank you, Putin, you come and save me with a patched up deal. How's that deal going for you? Has Syria used chemical weapons since the deal? Answer, a resounding in letters as big as the Hollywood sign. Yes. We're gonna change the game. If we mix something with tear gas, it isn't the other gas. So they use that and they're getting away with it. Nobody does anything. They're gassing their own people. But now we get new news. In 2007, the Israeli Air Force, without telling anybody, without even telling the American administration, went and bombed the North Korea, Freudian slip, not so much, went and bombed a Syrian secret nuclear facility. It was built with North Korean help. The Israelis found out about it. They tried quietly to see, will anything work? And they realized, all this talk about stopping Iran, nobody's doing it. All this talk about Syria seems to be heading the same direction, nobody's doing it. We're going in there and we're bombing it. They bombed it. Then Syria went in, cleaned up the whole mess and said, oh, the UN can come in and look. There's nothing there but a piece of land. They cleaned it all away, except the UN took soil samples and found radioactivity. So we know what was going on there. Well, guess what? The Syrians are back at it now again, in 2 different locations that Assad controls. So we have a double danger. One, that maybe he will, with North Korean help, get his own bomb. Because they learned the Gaddafi lesson. If I have nuclear weapons, my regime is secure. Nobody will topple me. Now I have nuclear weapons, I can get along with my other agenda. Israel, you may have nuclear weapons, but so do I. Who do you think is going to use them first? All right? So we have an increased danger of nuclear war. Syria with nukes. Iran with nukes. Israel, allegedly, with nukes. We have an increased danger, and nobody's doing anything except talk. Okay, so that's one danger. Second danger is, what if the rebels, whichever rebel group it is, gain control of those facilities? Get the poison gas. Get the nuclear materials. You can make a dirty bomb, just spread it around. You don't need a bomb. We have problems. Nobody wants to address them. God forbid anybody should report it. And Lebanon, poor Lebanon. Lebanon was, here comes that word again, occupied by Syria for years. Remember, this was a country, if you've ever, I know some of you have had her as a guest, Brigitte Gabriel. Wonderful lady, I know her and she knows me. And she tells the story of what befell the Christian population of Lebanon. And this was a country that saw the Christians lose position, in part because there was not enough support from the West. In 1860, the French sent an army and made sure the Christians were left alone. And with all due respect, when Ronald Reagan sent a U.S. peacekeeping force along with French and Italian, as soon as there was one terrorist bombing, we were out of here. This was wrong. The Christian population has dwindled. It's down to, so it used to be a bit over 50%. Then they were never sure, and they kept fudging numbers. They never took a census in Lebanon since 1934. They're down to about 12%. And Hezbollah, the Islamic terrorist group, these are Shiites, they are allies of Iran. Hezbollah is the de facto ruling government of Lebanon. And Hezbollah is the Gurkhas, the proxy mercenary soldiers hired by Iran to go help Syria, and they've crossed the border and they're helping Assad beat back the opposition. And they've armed to the teeth, and currently they have 150,000 missiles of all ranges, including missiles, several hundreds, that can reach as far south as Eilat, Israel, which is the southernmost tip of Israel on the map. So Israel's under missile range, and Hezbollah vows, we will fight again, and this time we will conquer Israeli territory. And yes, they too have been digging tunnels from southern Lebanon into Israel. They too say, we are going to capture the Galilee. Israel's got to be made to lose some of its territory to understand what's really going on in the Middle East. That's what's going on. And you would wonder, and we have this problem here, did the Israeli left, who applauded the idea of withdrawing from southern Lebanon in 2000, did they realize we took a situation which we controlled, and granted, we suffered occasionally. There was an attack, an ambush, somebody got killed, people got wounded. Are we better off leaving that scenario from having now the scenario of Hezbollah on the international border, digging under the border into Israel, and planning the next war, which will be unleashed the minute Tehran and or Damascus say it's feasible or it fits into the plan. Remember, if Assad starts losing in Syria, what's the easiest way to try to appeal to all Arabs and to the Muslim world? Finally, the great jihad against the Israeli enemy. We're launching it, join us. Many will stop shooting each other to join against the other enemy, the outsider. That's what we face there. Iraq is in a civil war. If there's any place in the Middle East that fits, it's a reversal of a famous one, that fits the maxim, we snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, Iraq is the place. We had won. People forget, having millions of Iraqis hold up their purple thumbs, having voted in a free election for a constitution, a government, voting several times. This is an unbelievable achievement. We got rid of one of the worst tyrants of the 20th century. Saddam Hussein was behind the scenes and then later took the president's chair from 1968. All right? A long tenure. Did he have WMDs? Yes, indeed, absolutely, without a doubt. I don't care what the media says. In my forthcoming book, I have a whole section on this. We found traces. And after our invasion was over and he was toppled, we moved 500 tons of yellow cake from Iraq to Canada for disposal. And what's yellow cake? A new Betty Crocker cake recipe? It's the basic ingredient to start making enriched uranium for bombs. Okay? We find chemical canisters there. Where did it all go? Well, I'm sorry, folks. When you take your sweet time saying, Iraq's in violation. Let's talk about it some more. Iraq's in violation. Let's go to Security Council. Resolution passed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, finally, you're not allowing us to inspect, so finally we have to invade. How much time did you give him to pack it up on the trucks and move it? To pack it on 2 airliners and fly it out? We have testimony. It was moved. Where do you think Syria got some of its basic raw materials to start making its nuclear program? They didn't go down Ahmed's hardware shop and say, hello, you got any yellow cake on the shelf? I'll buy 6 boxes. No. But they don't want to admit this. And my problem has always been, so where was the administration constantly pointing out all of this? And I know they have this thing, well, we don't want to reveal our sources because we may have to use those sources. And it is basically a big, big problem. You really don't want to do this. And now in this region, we have fewer and fewer human intelligence sources than ever before. And ELINT, electronic intelligence, will not suffice. So we have gaps, and if we've got agents on the ground, we don't want them to be exposed because we reveal stuff. And so George Bush took the rap. You lied, people died. No, we didn't lie. And people died. Why? Because we got in easy and the enemy decided, okay, time to go back to the Vietnam scenario. We counterattack and make them bleed. Make them bleed. Maim those American guys and gals. It'll be on the 6 o'clock news, and the American public who don't know much will say, oh, it's horrible, let's get out of here. I'm sorry, the wars are getting longer. The wars are getting bigger. You can't run away from it. If you run away from it, guess what? You're going to have it here. Just like they have it in France. And they're still apologizing. They still haven't gotten it.